Good morning. So we're gonna good morning. So let's go ahead and start on our do now for today. I'll give you about 2 minutes. Yes. All right. You all should be wrapping up the do now at this point.
Derek Montague and Zaria London report to the main office for dismissal. Derek Montague and Zaria London report to the main office for dismissal.
Who would like to answer number 1? Okay, let me go ahead and hand you.
Who is the author of A, Raisin in the Sun? A0C9, B,
Gwendolyn.
C, Lauren Hansberry. I pick C.
That would be correct. C, Lorraine Hansberry. Number 2, who would like to answer? Go ahead, Janae.
Where's the Raisin Sun sit? A, Harlem, B, Chicago, C, Baltimore, B, Chicago.
Very good. B, Chicago. So, boys and girls, on this past few weeks, we've been reading the play A Raisin in the Sun. And so, we've been tying that into African-American life post-Harlem Renaissance era. So, as we move out of the Harlem Renaissance and start moving into what it meant to live in the inner city, we will take a look at urban realism in African American life. So our particular time period that we're going to focus on is 1940 through 1960. So let me have someone raise your hand and tell me why are African Americans, what major event led to African Americans moving into the larger cities, the inner city, moving from the south, moving to the north? What major movement is that called? Raise your hand. Go ahead, Elmer. The Great Migration. So by way of the Great Migration, you're going to start having all of these themes, these real life things that authors, literary authors, artists, and musicians are starting to talk about for Black people. So by the end of the lesson, students will be able to analyze realist and modernist themes in African American culture, post-Harlem Renaissance and Great Depression. So now that we're out of the Harlem Renaissance and now that we're out of the Great Depression, we're going to start looking at how did African Americans live, what was going on in their lives in these inner city and urban environments. So this is our standard for today. So what's happening right now around this time? 1940 and 1960 is a very long, just at least 2 decades, 20 years. And in this time, you have the Great Migration concluding. You have World War II getting ready to take place. You have a social revolution brewing. The civil rights movement is going to start gaining foot after World War II. Desegregation, Brown versus Board in 1954. And economic depression, you had the Great Depression and the New Deal, which opened up for a lot of African Americans to find jobs and to move out of the depression that really kind of put their lives on hold economically. So what is realism? Who would like to read? Malaysia, read for me what realism is, that definition.
Realism is the quality or fact of representing a person, thing, or situation accurately or in a way that is true to life.
So realism is depicting something the way it is, something that's true to life. You all have a term that you like to use, like keep it real. You know, that's pretty much what realism is. Keeping it real, not sugarcoating anything, and making it true to life, very factual. So we're going to look at 4 particular authors that use urban realism in their writing. Authors such as Richard Wright, Gwendolyn Brooks, Ralph Ellison, and Lorraine Hansberry highlighted realism in their literature. You all are familiar with Lorraine Hansberry, so that's why we covered her in our Do Now. But we're going to look at Richard Wright. He was an author, and he wrote Native Son. Richard Wright introduced the story of a black youth growing up in inner city Chicago. Some of the themes and some of the subjects that he tackled was de facto segregation, housing, masculinity, and discrimination. Then we have one of my favorite authors, Gwendolyn Brooks, one of my favorite poets as well, who introduced feminist themes as well as urban reality in poems such as The Mother and We Real Cool. We'll be actually reading it today, guys. So then we also have Ralph Ellison, and in his novel Invisible Man, he discusses racial identity and classification in America. Lorraine Hansberry, who we've already covered, her play A Raisin in the Sun illustrates themes of cultural, racial, and manly pride in South Side of Chicago. So all of these novels and poems have in common urban reality and real life African American culture, the depiction of real life African American culture in inner city communities. This is a picture of Gwendolyn Brooks in the far left corner, Ralph Ellison in the far right. At the bottom, the lower left, is Richard Wright, and Lorraine Hansberry is in the lower right. Two of my favorites would be Gwendolyn Brooks and Richard Wright. He really goes there. I feel like Richard Wright is a very realist writer. So what does urban realism tell us? Melanie, would you please read that for me? What does urban realism tell us?
What does urban realism tell us about African American life? Urban realism illustrates African American life post-Great Migration, offers candid depiction of racism, poverty, gender roles, and everyday life in the urban environment.
Very good. So we're going to take a look at how racism is depicted. So I'm not going to sugarcoat it. If I'm trying to project urban realism, I'm going to be real. I'm going to tell it like it is. I'm going to maybe have some gore. I know Malaysia wrote a short story, and her short story was very graphic, and it depicted the violence that was going on in African American lives. And so that would be an aspect of urban realism because it's showing it true to how the life is. So this is what we are going to do, our We Do for the day. We're going to read a poem, one of my favorites by Gwendolyn Brooks, entitled Real Cool. We Real Cool. All right, do I have a volunteer that would like to read it? All right, go ahead, and would you please read that for us?
We Real Cool. The pool players sitting at the golden shower. We real cool. We left school. We lurk late. We strike straight. We sing sin. We bend gin. We jazz June. We dance silent.
So I want you to just take a minute and think about what Gwendolyn Brooks is trying to say with not that many words, just a quick poem. But what is she trying to show about African American life in this? So I'll read it one more time because your You Do will ask you to analyze. So the pool players, 7 at the Golden Show. We real cool. We left school. We lurk late. We strike straight. We sing sin. We bend gin. We jazz June. We die soon. So now, for your correction, we are actually not in slavery. This is postmodernism. So this is going to be 1940 through 1960. So this is going to be a time where African Americans are starting to really live and thrive in urban environments such as Chicago and Harlem and Philadelphia and Baltimore. So your You Do, you're going to analyze how Real Cool illustrates urban realism. You're going to answer the following questions. What does this poem reveal about urban realism? What is the use of urban realism in the poem reveal about African American life? And what symbols does Brooks use to depict urban realism? So I'm going to give you guys about 2 minutes to just quickly jot down those questions, and I'm going to put back up the poem so that you can analyze and you can see, you can have and be able to answer what these questions are asking you. So just real quickly, if you'll just jot down those 3 sentences for me. Does everyone have all 3 copies? Okay. Take your time. Alright, so as I scan the room, I see everyone pretty much has their sentences copied. So I'm going to go and put back up the poem so you can analyze these 3 questions. What does this poem tell us about African American life? How is the use of urban realism relevant in this poem? Alright, so does everyone understand the poem at this point? So as you all move, as we conclude our lesson, as you all finish up your you-do activity, I would like for you all to go ahead and jot down your exit ticket, and you may turn that in on your way out.